Okay, looks like we're live. So, hello. Welcome to the video for this week. I hope you've been having a good week and that you're feeling however you're feeling. All right. So, this week, this week's talk is going to be the prelude to what I want to talk about next week in my next live. So, it's really funny. I announced that I was going to do a live yesterday, and I was like, I don't know what I'm going to talk about. And I'm really glad that I didn't specify anything because I didn't really nail down specifically what I wanted to talk about until this morning. And um, I think the other thing that I want to say is that, again, what I'm going to be talking about in this video is really, again, the foundations for absolutely everything that I'm teaching. And the reason I continue to talk about this and kind of say it in different ways, with different words and in different angles, is because this, if you get this, everything else will make sense. If you don't get this, you're going to apply the whole self-love path to the self-improvement path, to the what most of us think of as the self-help path, the spirituality path that currently exists. And because of that foundation, that foundational misunderstanding of why we're doing this, or what the point is, or what this work is supposed to be giving us, or any of these things, we will turn this path into something that is essentially like, and I don't want to say useless, and I'm not going to say useless, but it turns it into something that's more torture and more struggle and trauma and drama than it needs to be. Okay? So the thing that I want to talk about next week, that I am going to talk about next week, is why embracing all your worst stuff, all your worst habits, all your worst behaviors, all your worst thought patterns, all your self-sabotage, all your coping mechanisms, fully embracing those things and ending your battle with them, meaning stopping trying to fix yourself, stopping trying to change yourself, stopping trying to get rid of these things about you, and going down the path of fully embracing them as though they are going to be with you for the rest of your life, and that they are not something you're ever going to get rid of. And doing that from a perspective of, how am I going to figure out how to love myself within this? Like, actually radically letting go of this idea that you're ever going to change, that you're ever going to be different, and that your happiness is going to come from you changing, you being different, and letting that idea go. And this practice of how we actually embrace exactly what we are right now, with this radical self-love, which is probably one of the scariest things you'll ever do in your life. Why that is so powerful, and how that is the key to connecting you to true pain and true pleasure, to real reality. That it is the key to deprogramming and deconditioning your traumatized nervous system that doesn't understand right now the difference between true pain and true pleasure. Because that, again, right, all of us are living in this illusionary world, and this delusion that we have all been indoctrinated into, which is that we don't know what real reality is, because we've been so indoctrinated, and our nervous systems have been so indoctrinated into survival equals being loved, survival equals being accepted, getting my needs met equals someone else understanding me and meeting my needs. And so there is pain, there is trauma, there is struggle inside of ourselves when we feel like we're doing something that's going to get us abandoned, that's going to get us rejected, that does get us abandoned and rejected. So anything that got us abandoned and rejected in our childhoods, when we truly were victims, could not meet our own needs, really did need someone to meet our needs for us and understand us in ways we couldn't understand ourselves, in order to make the pain go away and to have pleasure. And then as adults, now we still live like that, right? We are all living this codependent consensus reality thing where, again, we have debates on the internet and we do all these things because we still all believe that it's in convincing other human beings of our perspective that makes our perspective true and then therefore gives us the results that we want. None of us are saying, if I'm not getting the results that I want, it's because the thing that I believe is false. None of us are going that far, right? Most of us are going like, if I'm not getting the results that I want, it's because too many people are disagreeing with me, or I haven't found the guru or the right person to tell me that I'm right, right? Like we all are looking for some medical doctor or some intuitive or some healer or some guide or some coach to tell us that our ideas about how we're going to heal are true. And then we think that's going to be the thing that lets us heal. And so we're all caught up in this consensus reality. And so we don't understand the difference. We cannot feel the difference between true pain and true pleasure and consensus reality, pain and pleasure. So again, that there is such a biological relief and release and feeling of safety that we get when we feel like we're being approved of, when we feel like we're being accepted, when we feel like we're doing the right thing by the standards of those around us, that it convinces us that no matter what results we're getting in real reality, that we're doing the right thing. And the same thing is on the flip side, that we can be doing something that's totally in alignment in real reality, something that's actually getting us the results that we want, something that's actually the right path, something that's really taking us where we want to go. But we have all this dissent, and that causes so much pain and so much turmoil that we can literally feel like we're doing it wrong all the time. Because, again, there's a part of us that feels good when we do what's in alignment with reality, but then that gets taken over by how painful it is and how scared our nervous systems are about getting rejected or having people not agree with us, right? Or we're getting bad results, we're doing something that is actually harmful to ourselves, but we're getting so much praise and acceptance, so much everyone agreeing with us, saying you're on the right path, you're doing the right thing. It feels so good to get that we can feel that pseudo alignment and think we're on the right path, right? We will literally like eat a diet for years and years and years and years and years that doesn't actually feel good in our body, but that everyone agrees with and makes it so that we fit in and we are accepted and we're part of the group. And so there's that pleasure in that. And it's comfort and it's security and it's safety. So it's not so cut and dry. And like I said, the path to dismantling that is really radical. The path to getting to a place where you can actually know this is true reality, this is false reality, this feels good because acceptance, this feels good because it's actually in alignment with truth, this feels bad because it's not in alignment, this feels bad simply because I'm being rejected. The way we figure that out and unprogram ourselves is to radically embrace absolutely everything we do. We have to get to a place where we fully surrender shame and guilt. And that's scary, because all of us think if we let go of shame and guilt and we just do whatever we want, we're going to be horrible, self-destructive, externally destructive, right? We all have this conditioning that we're fundamentally evil, or that we fundamentally don't know. Even if you don't believe that you're evil, and that if left to your own devices without all the morality and the guilt and the shame, that you would just be harmful because you're inherently harmful. Even if you don't believe that, you probably believe that, well, then how will you know what's right and wrong? That there would be no way of knowing, and you would just destroy yourself and destroy other people and not know that you're doing it until it's too late. And what I'm going to say is that that is not true. Is that once we let go of shame and guilt, we start the reawakening process of our actual feelings. And And it requires that we go through a phase of letting ourselves jump on the bed all night and eat the Cocoa Puffs and just get the stomachache and have the stomachache be no judgment on us. Because in that place, when we feel safe, right, when we're working with our actual nervous systems, if we can be in pain and still feel safe and loved, we can learn from that pain. If we're in pain and we feel shame and guilt and rejection and abandonment, we cannot learn from that pain. And we will loop and loop and loop. So that's what we're going to talk about in the next video, because that is such a radical thing to embrace. And I want, again, to lay a few more foundations before we go there. Because again, this self-love path that I'm talking about is totally radical. It's totally radical. And it's going into the deepest, darkest recesses of yourself. It's not Tony Robbins spirituality, where you can just hype yourself up into a positive state. It's not Dispenza, and you can just think yourself into a positive state, and it's your broken brain that's stopping you. No. I am starting this self-love path that I teach starts with these foundations. Okay? And this is the opposite of where the rest of the world is starting from. And that's why applying those rules to this path doesn't equate. You're going to apply those rules to this path, and then you're not going to get the results from this path. Because the foundations of this path are: there is nothing wrong with you. There is nothing to fix. You are not broken. Your trauma is not something wrong with you. Your coping mechanisms are not something wrong with you. Your self-sabotage are not something that's wrong with you. Your fear, your anxiety, your depression is not something that's wrong with you. Your physical pain is not something that's wrong with you. The fact that you hate yourself, the fact that you don't know how to love yourself, the fact that you don't feel safe in your own skin, the fact that you don't know what your purpose is, the fact that you are seemingly destructive to yourself and other people is not something that's wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with you. You're reacting and you're responding to a world that is traumatizing and out of alignment. Your pain, hi Callie. Your pain is a reaction. It's a response. There has never been anything wrong with you, and there's never going to be anything wrong with you. And if we're starting from the place of how do I fix this about myself? How do I fix my negative emotions? How do I fix my body? How do I fix my shame? How do I fix my guilt? How do I fix my conditioning? How do I fix my trauma? How do I fix? This is how we get on that I'm always on a healing journey and I'm never getting anywhere. I'm never healed. I'm just constantly in pain and I'm constantly working to try to fix this. Because it is that idea. The idea that there's something to fix, right? That we are starting off on the completely wrong foot. So if we start with the wrong foundation, we can't ever get to where we want to go. And I'm going to get into this, even this idea that there's somewhere that we need to get before we can be happy, before we can have peace, before this path can work, is a misunderstanding. There's the paradox of this life, which is that there's always going to be something to learn. There's always going to be something to grow into. There's always going to be something that our perception and our perspective didn't understand before. There's always going to be pain that comes from, I thought life worked this way, I'm going on doing that, and it works another way. Or I just created something, I just became something, I just grew into something. And now this next thing that I want to grow into, This next evolutionary step is somewhere I've never been before, something I've never done before. So I am going to bump up against the limits of my understanding. There is going to be pain, right? And like I said, when pain no longer means we're doing something wrong, when pain no longer means there's something wrong with us, when pain no longer means there's something wrong with how the world is working, when pain no longer means there's something wrong, but simply there's something to learn, there's no more moral judgment. Again, this is how we get out of suffering right now. So your ticket out of suffering. I can't promise you your ticket out of pain. Pain will always be there. But I can give you the ticket out of suffering. And that is to accept and embrace that there's never been anything wrong with you. There's nothing to fix. Your pain is not a sign that you are broken. Your pain is not a sign that the earth is broken. Your pain is not a sign that anything is broken. And in fact, pain is a good sign. Pain means things are working. When it becomes a moral judgment, the reason that hurts so much, the reason that gets us stuck in suffering, is because it obfuscates the actual thing that's happening and makes it about our worthiness and our goodness, and deeper than that, about our capacity to survive and to have our needs met. Because again, that's what we learned in childhood. That when I'm in pain, I get rejected, I get abandoned, I get misunderstood. Even if your caregivers were like fully on it and loved you and just you had pain they didn't understand. That was a trauma where you learned that there's something about me and being in pain that makes it so that my caregivers don't provide for me, don't make the pain go away, don't save me. And that makes me feel unsafe. And like I'm not going to be okay and I'm not going to get my needs met. So we have such, and then because of the child perspective, is we can't do anything about our environment. We can't even do anything about the actual causes and roots of our pain. We don't understand that we have a stomach ache because of something that we ate. And we just need to not eat that food anymore. Maybe we have an allergy or something. All we know is I'm in pain now, and then I might be expressing that through crying or throwing up or whatever. And if caregivers then get upset with us about our crying, about our throwing up, about our reaction, the reaction is the only thing we have control over. As a little child, we don't have control over the circumstances. We don't have control over why it happened or how it happened or when it's happening or how to make it go away, because we don't understand any of that. We only have control over our reaction. And those are the seeds of there's something wrong with you. Right? If your caregivers didn't know how to understand your pain and not make your pain your fault, not respond and react to your reaction, if they responded and reacted to your reaction or abandoned you or didn't know how to fix your pain, you started to learn, right? Pain equals not getting my needs met. My reactions to pain equal not getting my needs met. And then it becomes all about trying to fix your reaction to pain. And this is how we all learn not to cry, not to express, not to be emotional, which were the seeds of developing depression, of developing anxiety, of developing these mood disorders. Because now we are not free to have the emotional process, because this is the big key. Whenever we go through anything, there's an emotional process we have to go through. It doesn't matter how much you understand what you're going through. It doesn't matter how much you intellectually get whatever you're going through. You're still a human, physical animal. And you have to have your emotional reaction to whatever you're going through. And see, if all of us had learned how to have emotional mastery, we could be sad, cry, move through that, and it wouldn't be this big deal. We could get angry and be frustrated and have anger as an emotion and know how to just feel it and embody it. And maybe we get a little frustrated, maybe we like yell into a pillow or But that's it. It doesn't turn violent. It doesn't have to be. The point being, when we emotionally have healthy emotional expression, it doesn't mean we become stone Buddhists who have no emotion. It means our emotions are not a violent part of our lives anymore, because it's only when we suppress things that they explode. So we all learned how to suppress. We all learned how to negate. We all learned how to numb. We all learned how to run from our emotions. And so again, now we're no longer even looking at the pain. Now we're running from the expression of the pain, the reaction of the pain, trying to fix how we react to pain, which would fix itself if we just allowed ourselves to feel what we feel and to not be so afraid of emotion. But we're all so afraid of emotion because our emotions got us rejected. And then our behavior got us rejected. And then we never learned to learn from pain and pleasure. The fact that so many of us walk around in bodies and we say, I don't know what's good for me to eat and not. If we really think about that, okay, and this is not a judgment, I mean this in like the purest form of the word, that's insane. Like, we're in our body. We can feel, like, again, being someone who has practiced this, and I'm saying, okay, it's not insane because of you. It's not your fault that it's insane that you don't know what your body is telling you. Okay? That's conditioning. That's the world you were raised in, where you were taught how to not be able to hear yourself. You were taught to turn off your feelings in exchange for consensus reality. You were taught to ignore what feels truly good to you, to ignore what feels truly bad to you, in exchange for, hey Mike, hello, in exchange for what gets you acceptance and approval. And in order to live in alignment with that, you needed shame and guilt. So the shame and the guilt were there to make you feel bad about all the things that actually are true, that naturally feel good. So now your wires get crossed. And that consensus reality approval overrides the negative feeling we all have when we're doing something that's actually out of alignment with truth. But it's okay, but we feel better and okay because we're getting love. This is why so many spiritual teachers are frauds. They're not frauds because they're meaning to be frauds. So many of them don't even know that what they're teaching isn't true. They're not actually getting the good results from what they're teaching. They feel better and are feeling good and are feeling like they're getting good results because so many people are approving of what they're teaching. And we feel good listening to them because they're telling us, usually, something we want to hear. Like Joe Dispenza is telling us that our brains are broken and we can just fix it. And we want to hear that. So everyone's getting some sort of positive result. But it doesn't mean that what he's teaching is true. And he has no idea that what he's teaching isn't true. He's being so approved of. He's getting so much love and acceptance for what he's teaching that it feels right. It feels good. And the people who are following him finally have an answer. Finally have a solution. Finally have if I just do this meditation long enough, if I just do this positive thinking enough, if I just commit to this practice, I've got my answer. Yay! It makes sense to me intellectually. So now we're all circle approving of each other. And because of that community support, we feel better. The tool is useless. Or right? Like I say, based on a foundation that's not true. There's nothing wrong with your brain. Your brain is responding. You're not going to fix your brain. You're going to fix your environment. You're going to fix your perception, maybe. The stories you tell yourself. But ultimately, you're not going to just positive think your way into anything. Because you didn't negative think your way into anything. That wasn't the problem. You got traumatized. So you see. So that's why I say the reason that you don't know what your body is telling you is not your fault. At all. Not your fault at all. But it's a collective insanity. Right? It's a collective insanity that we all have. that, and so what I was just going to say is that in my own body, I've done so much work to just say, like, throw out all the rules. Like, what if none of the rules exist? And I'm just feeling what it feels like in my body. What if no one has it figured out? And I completely abandon all science and all reason and all this. Because, not because any of that stuff is wrong. There's definitely awesome information out there. But just to say, there came a point in my journey where it was like I was so caught up in trying to figure out what the right thing was and reading from this person and this philosophy and that and that and that, that I had so much information and so much contradictory information that it was all in my head and I couldn't figure out what was going on in my body at all. So I eventually was just like, I'm just going to throw it all out and learn to feel. Like, what if I could actually trust my body? And my body wanted things that my mind was like, that's not right, that's not good, you can't do that. That's harmful, that's not going to work. And over all these years now, I look back to when I first started this to where I am now, and like I saved my own life by doing that. And now I'm at a point where I can put something in my mouth and I know that it's not going to work for me and I will spit it out. and I don't need anyone to tell me that. And I have healed from things. And I am in a place physically right now that I should not be, medically speaking. 100% because I listen to my body. And so, but I can understand that I'm super sensitive. I was never able to turn my pain off. And even for me, that journey of reconnecting to what does my body actually want and what actually is serving it right now. And this metaphor also ties into what I'm saying, which is letting go of the idea that I was ever going to get this perfectly healthy body. And saying, how can I live to nourish the body that I actually have right now? How can I live to actually serve the body I have right now? How can I find as much joy and as much pleasure in the body I have right now? Because I don't know if it's ever going to get actually better. Right? Like there was this letting go of this happily ever after I had in my mind on every level. And again, that's what we're going to dive deep into this in the next video. But this self-love path is based on the foundations of letting go of heaven. And that's why it's so scary. And I think a lot of people hear this message, and I say it over and over and over again, but we don't want to hear it. Because we still fundamentally and foundationally as a society believe that happiness is over there. Believe that there is some transcendence we can reach in this life. That where all of our pain has gone, or we've healed from all of our trauma, or like I say, our body is in perfect path, where we have found our actual life purpose and we're living our life purpose. And we've found this answer to suffering and spirituality, or we've lost our ego, or whatever it is that we're telling ourselves. We found the perfect partner, we got the perfect job, we got the perfect house, we got the perfect location, we got the perfect something. Religion. You were good in your human form, and now there's heaven, where all the pain stops, all the growth stops, and you're just happy forever now. And that is the only source of happiness. So we're constantly on these treadmills of trying to fix that thing that's broken in us, that's preventing us from having that happiness, that's preventing us from having the joy and the peace and the what we want. Because we don't see that it isn't anywhere but here. That heaven may never come. That what you think you require before you are going to feel good might never happen. Because in this life, we are not guaranteed anything. In this life, we are not guaranteed anything. And anyone who tells you that they can guarantee something for you is making a bet that they can't actually live up to. Okay? Learning how reality functions and learning cause and effect and learning that there's a structure to the nature of our reality is important. Absolutely. It's a part of this. Learning how to have some control out of your outcomes is a part of this. We are not completely out of control. Being that we have consciousness that can observe and understand patterns means we're capable of exerting some control over our reality. Right? Like, we don't have to get a stomachache if we understand that ice cream gives us a stomachache. We can just not eat ice cream and we control that outcome. Or we can eat it and essentially we're controlling that outcome the other way too. Can we control the fact that ice cream gives us a stomachache? No, we don't have control over that. That's the structure. But we can control how we react and respond to that structure. So this is the thing. We have both free will and determinism existing exactly at the same time. And so there's that part of life. But then there's also the part that to our perspective will always be chaos. Will always be, I thought it was going to go this way, it went that way. Will always be, there's pain involved. I didn't know what was going to happen. I don't have control. I'm going to go forth with the expectation that I have. I'm going to go forth to experience what I want to experience, to try to create what I want to create. But we have to hold that with the understanding that it may never happen, and that how we're going about it right now might be totally wrong. And again, not in a moral failing kind of way, totally wrong in the sense that we're going to attempt to get from New York to California by going north. And that's just not the way you get there. You can't get west by going north. That's just against the structure. We can go as north as we want to go. And eventually we'll be heading south. And then we'll be back in New York and we'll never reach California. And until we understand, oh, California is west, not north, we can go, like I say, as north as we want. And so we need to understand that when we live for heaven, when we live for my happiness is going to come from over there. And especially the way this translates on the self-love path. I will be happy when I understand all my emotions. I will be happy when I have healed all my trauma. I will be happy when I have complete awareness of consensus reality, pain and pleasure versus true pain and pleasure. I will be happy when I'm no longer in pain because I've figured it all out. I will be happy when I have stepped into my purpose. I will be happy when I'm no longer emotionally reactive. I will be happy and good enough because this is exactly what we're doing. We're taking the self-love path and we're forcing it into that I'm not yet good enough. This is how I'm going to earn my worth. This is how I'm going to earn my goodness, my value. This is the person I'm going to become. And when I achieve that, I will be happy. Right? We've all got this, I can't be happy until I become my higher self. Until I've transcended it. Until I no longer have emotions I don't understand and pain and all these things. And we're doing it for an external reason. We're still following this self-love path because we think it will make us acceptable. It will make us the good version of ourselves. The perfect version of ourselves. The version of ourselves that no one can criticize. The version of ourselves that is constantly benevolent and always able to give and always able to sacrifice and always able to be of support to others. Where we've disappeared. And it's this that keeps us trapped. That so long as we're still trying to get rid of parts of ourselves, so long as we're telling ourselves that if I just do this path enough, all the pain will go away. And even telling ourselves that I'm going to get to a point one day where I love myself so much it doesn't matter if people reject me, that never hurts me again. That's a heaven we might never get to. Rather, the peace that's available on this path is simply this. I am a human being with human emotions, with human trauma, with a human perspective, who's always going to be bumping up against pain, who's always going to have something to learn, who's always going to have something I'm working through. Because that is the nature of growth. And there is one characteristic of life, and that is it must be growing. That's a foundational, observable fact of life. Therefore, heaven cannot exist here. Heaven cannot exist here. Our version of heaven, the I have completed it, cannot exist here. Everything that we are is the foundation for the next thing we're going to evolve into. So we can evolve our traumas into higher and higher and higher understanding, which leads to a completely different experience of those traumas, a completely different expression of those traumas, a completely different way that we then, like I say, we can take what we learn from our traumas and then it turns into something we offer others, which then turns into even more learning about that because other perspectives of the same kinds of trauma add to ours. And it's like, it can be this just continual adventure. And this is what I'm saying. It's like the self-love path is liberation right now. Because it says, I am good enough on the journey that I am always going to be on. That none of my pain and none of my struggle and none of my negative emotion and none of my confusion and none of my delusion has to cut me off from the love that I desire to have. And it's saying that by cutting myself off from that love, I'm not getting myself closer to becoming that person I want to become. I'm never going to scare myself, shame myself, hate myself into a more evolved version of who I am. This idea that we have in our culture that no pain, no gain, that people are becoming fantastic human beings because of the antagonism of their lives. I'm just going to call bullshit on that. Lots of people become amazing people in spite of the trauma of their lives. But we never know what those people would have been had they just been fostered. Had they just been loved. And most of the people who turn their deep, deep, dark suffering into something that makes them an amazing person figured out some way of loving themselves inside of their pain and trauma, or had some sort of mentor or some sort of someone or something that came along at some point and saw them in their pain and loved them and validated them. That's what liberated them. And if that isn't what happened, a lot of these people that we look at who had all these horrible suffering lives and then they look like they're doing something benevolent are incredibly self-destructive or abusive behind the scenes. Because their trauma is still leading the show. Their trauma is not what woke them up. They woke up in spite of that trauma. So I'm not saying trauma is wrong and bad. I'm saying, yes, we can learn from it, and we're going to learn from it. But this idea that it is the reason we evolve, no, it isn't. Love is always the reason we evolve. Safety is the reason we evolve. We can go through all this trauma, and it's the moments of love and peace and safety where we integrate that trauma and grow. And so again, remembering too that on our path of healing trauma, there is no, and then I came into safety, and then I evolved. Our nervous systems are going to bounce back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And that's why I say the key to liberation and out of suffering is this one practice of I love myself unconditionally just as I am right here, right now. Because the myth that means I'm going to stay this horrible, self-destructive, never healing person, that I'm never going to get out of this negative emotion, that I'm never going to change. If I just love and accept myself in my depression, I'll be depressed forever. If I just love and accept myself in my coping mechanisms, I'm going to be coping forever. If I love and accept myself in my pain, I'll never be motivated to change. Wrong. All of the motivation to do anything different comes from first feeling safe in what you're in. Comes from your nervous system relaxing when you say to yourself, yes, I'm in pain, but I'm not going to abandon you. I'm still going to meet your needs. I'm still going to be here for you. Yes, we're struggling. That's okay. I'm here. You're not going to die. I'm not going to abandon you. You're good enough. That is the key to understanding our pain. That is the key to transformation. That is the key. There is nothing outside of that. We are all in a state of trauma and chaos and running around like chickens with our heads cut off. We don't feel what we're feeling in our bodies. We don't feel what other people are feeling. We're disconnected from our humanity because we're all so scared. Because we're in fight or flight. And we're looking for that heaven that we think is going to be the thing that sets us free. And it's not reality. Reality is heaven is right here, inside of whatever you're in. Heaven does not require anything to change. And people will ask me that, right? Well, if I can feel good inside whatever I'm in, what's the point of going after anything? And I'm like, exactly. This is exactly it. When you come from a place of actually loving yourself for who and what you are right now, then you will figure out the things that are actually worth it to you to go towards, and the things that you're just doing because you think it will give you the love that you think you need to have to feel safe. When you love yourself safe, you might find that you're completely exhausted and you don't want to do anything right now, and you don't want to change, and you don't want to heal, and you don't want to do your spiritual practices, and you don't want to help your body, and you don't want to do friggin' anything. And that's a part of it. And like I said, we're going to talk about that more next week. But eventually, as you love yourself safe, continually, over time, you're going to find naturally inside yourself, you want to do things. You want to create things. You want to go for things. You want to do these things simply like a flower wants to bloom. Like a tree wants to create apples. Because it's your expression. And rather than, I cannot be happy until I get to the apples, you will then become someone who can enjoy the process of your life. Because your entire life is just a process. Those peak moments, those outcomes, those things that we get are moments in time. And if we live for that, and they are not permanent. Nothing is permanent. You are going to get your dream body, and then you're going to be 50. And you can't have that anymore. And if the whole thing about your happiness was based on having that, Even if you get it, it's going to cause suffering when you inevitably lose it or when it inevitably changes. Because that's the thing. You might get your dream thing and it might not ever go away, right? You might get that dream job and then you work it for the rest of your life. You might get that dream partner and you have that dream partner. But the circumstances of that relationship, the circumstances of that job are always going to be changing. There will always be conflict. There will always be something that comes up that complicates it. We're never gonna get to heaven. So, are you gonna be able to enjoy your life where you're gonna have traumas you haven't dealt with yet, where you're always gonna have emotions, where you're always gonna have stuff that you don't know, where you're always going to be faced with the pain of being rejected, and that's going to hurt because you're a human being, where you never become a stone Buddha who has no more emotions? Are you going to enjoy the journey? Are you going to enjoy the growth that all of this is, right? The true key to liberation is understanding that none of it's permanent, all of it's going to change, that anything that you achieve will be the bottom of the next thing you want to achieve, and so much of what you want may never happen. But within all of that, you can have peace and joy and love in your heart, even when you're facing your deepest, darkest trauma. You can have joy when shit is hitting the fan, and not a fake joy, an underlying I know myself joy. I am worthy of love no matter what I am in. I am worthy of love no matter what I'm in. The choice to be on your own side, no matter what is happening, is the key out of suffering. You can be in excruciating pain and not be suffering if you are on your own side. You can be in a tiny little sort of uncomfortable amount of pain and be deeply suffering if you are antagonizing yourself. Every little step you have to take towards where you're going can be hell or can be heaven. Purely based on, are you on your own side or not? I have been through so many circumstances that other people could look at and be like, that sucked. Being poor, being trapped places, having really bad physical health, being deeply abandoned by my caregivers at a very young age, being socially outcasted, being so sensitive and not knowing. I didn't know to suffer in a lot of those situations because I wasn't judging them as something that was wrong with me. I always looked at something as like, this is a growth opportunity. But it doesn't mean that I'm bad. It doesn't mean that I suck. It doesn't mean I have to reject myself. I lived in this weird bubble and certain times and places where I just didn't get the memo that I was supposed to hate myself that I'm poor. That I didn't get the memo that I'm supposed to hate myself that I don't know what my next step is. That I just fully believed I'll figure it out and I'm on my own side while I do it. And so I look back on many things in my life and think, actually, that was like pretty hard and like really intense. But I didn't perceive it that way because it was just my path at the time. And this is what I'm saying. I didn't suffer in a lot of these things that should have been pretty traumatizing. because I just didn't perceive that I needed to abandon myself in them. Literally just that idea that I knew that I could figure it out and that I was going to be with me until I did is the reason I've gone through so many painful things that didn't turn into suffering for me. And then there were a lot of things, just like everyone else, that I went through that were deeply suffering. Because there was always that story of, you can't love yourself until this is different. You can't have love until this is different. You are not safe, you are not good enough, you're not enough until this is different. And so we all need to accept that normal is messed up. Messed up in the sense that it's out of alignment and it's out of sync with how we function. And so all of our pain and all of our trauma and all of our drama and a lot of the things that we think we have to achieve and become before we can be happy are reactions to an out of alignment society, to an out of alignment world that we are a part of and that we're indoctrinated into. But if we can just start with, my pain does not mean there's something wrong with me. My path does not mean there's something wrong with me. Where I am right now is not something that means I don't deserve love. I don't feel like doing anything else. I don't feel like making it better. I don't want to go anywhere. When I love myself, I get exhausted. If that's how you feel, okay. Love yourself in that. Make that okay. And so like I say, we're going to talk about this a lot more in the next live. But this self-love path is not about achieving anything. It's not about getting anywhere. It's about the continual practice of showing up with love and acceptance for whatever you are right now. All of that stuff, the healing of the trauma, the becoming your higher self, all of that stuff probably will happen. When you do this. But that's not the goal. Because all of that stuff is going to be a result of the fact that you loved yourself right now. All of that stuff that you want to become will be a result of continually showing up for yourself as you are right here, right now. Because again, the answers to how we even get to there are all going to be found in feeling what feels good to us right now. Trusting that, doing that, and learning from that. And like I say, for a lot of us, that's going to be fuck the spiritual practice. Fuck the diet. Fuck the trying. Fuck the striving. I just want to sit in the park and feed my birds. Good. Do that. Fully embrace it. That's your next step. Because again, how we're all going to get to where we want to go, we all need to admit this. We don't know how we're going to get there. If we did, we'd be there. Whatever you think is going to get you there probably isn't right. You're only going to figure out how to get there by letting go of trying to get there and loving who you are right now and giving yourself what you need right now. You do that over and over and over and over and over again in each and every little moment. Number one, your life starts to feel a lot better right now. Nothing needs to change. If you just continue to show up for yourself and say, what do I need right now? Life can feel pretty good right now because you're meeting your needs right now, which is the reason you're suffering right now because your needs aren't being met right now. You're not suffering because your needs aren't being met in 10 years. You're not suffering because your needs didn't get met 10 years ago. You're suffering because 10 years ago you learned how to not meet your need and now you're still not meeting it. So meet it. What do you need right now? Love. Most of the time. Just, it's okay that I am where I am. That's the foundational need we all have 24/7. I'm acceptable how I am right now. That's the base need. All other needs will become available, and you will become aware of them from that one. And then over and over and over again, you do that. You're going to watch how your needs change and change and change. And each day you need something a little bit different, and you want something a little bit different, and then all of a sudden, you just kept joyfully meeting your needs. You just kept showing up for yourself. When you were sad, you let yourself cry. When you were angry, you let yourself express. When you needed to go for a run, so you did that. You wanted to write this down, so you did it. And then all of a sudden, in 10 years, you're this person you always imagined you would be, and you didn't work to become that person at all. All you did was meet your needs over and over and over again. And in so doing, you reconnected to your humanity. You connected to reality, and each step of the way was something that fulfilled you. And the whole journey was exciting. The whole journey was fun. You forgot to get traumatized by any of it because you were there for it. You were there for yourself in it. And that is the key to getting out of suffering. There will be pain. So then show up for yourself. So it doesn't need to be suffering. Your path to self-love is now. It doesn't occur anywhere else. You may never become who you want to become, and that will not stop you from loving yourself fully, because you can only love yourself fully right now. If you want to enjoy your life and let go of the idea of heaven, love yourself right now. And I promise you, it won't mean that you never go for anything and you never grow. It will be the reason you do all that stuff. And it will then be the reason you actually enjoy the journey. Because your whole life is mostly the journey. You keep waiting for that, even if you get it, that's a moment. If it sucked all the way there, what was the point? This is your life now. So what do I need to feel loved and safe right now? That's the self-love practice, because my life is right now. It's all right here. If I'm sad right now, I need comfort in my sadness. If I'm angry, if I'm frustrated, if I'm in pain, if I'm excited, if I want to go for something, if I want to try something, if I want to do something, that's it. It's just that question over and over and over again. So your life becomes about meeting your needs in the moment, feeling your feelings in the moment, doing what you need to do in the moment, and that will equal planning when you need to plan. That will equal doing things you need to do for preparations for later when you need to do that. It will feel good. It doesn't mean you're like just fully in the moment and never plan again. Again, we'll talk about this more in the next video. But the foundations of this path is there's nothing wrong with you. Your pain is nothing wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with you. If you make that your mantra, there's nothing wrong with me, so what do I need right now to feel safe and loved? There's nothing wrong with me, so what do I need right now to feel safe and loved? That's it. You don't need to watch any more videos. You don't need another spiritual teaching for the rest of your life. You can throw out all your books. You just do that one thing. That's the answer. That's the key out of suffering. How do I show up for myself right now? That's it. That's the secret. I just gave it to you, so now that's it. Practice it. All right? There's nothing wrong with you. There never has been, and there never will be. Just that. How do you show up for yourself right now? Okay. I love you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for watching. You're good enough, just as you are, right here, right now. Heaven is available right now. Are you willing to give it to yourself? All right? Mwah. See you next week, where we'll take this idea even deeper. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being you. Thank you for showing up. You're the greatest. You're exactly who you need to be. There's nothing missing from you. It's all life evolving itself.